Fala, Natural, eu queria te fazer uma pergunta. Você ainda tem dúvida se o seu treino deveria ser diferente do que comumente vemos por aí? Hoje, em poucos minutos, eu vou tentar esclarecer essa questão para você. Quando comparamos duas coisas, temos que levar em consideração muitos fatores. Particularmente, eu gosto de usar o pensamento cinza. E o que seria isso? O mundo não é preto e branco. Por mais que eu ache importante a gente entender que existam dois opostos em praticamente tudo, a imensa maioria das coisas não estão nos extremos, e sim no meio termo. Por isso a ideia de pensamento cinza. Agora vamos tentar levar esse pensamento para a musculação, mais especificamente para o nosso tema. O treinamento de forma natural versus o treinamento com substâncias dopantes. Vamos levar em consideração que nessa pauta, um seria preto e o outro seria branco. Quando temos coisas que se diferenciam, à medida que levamos essas diferenças ao limite, mais diferentes ficam, certo? Vamos fazer uma analogia com atletas de fisiculturismo. De um lado naturais, de outro lado não naturais. Ambos fazem de tudo ao alcance, e nos casos naturais dentro das regras, para atingir o máximo potencial individual. Agora, tirando a diferença óbvia já citada, será que eles usam as mesmas ferramentas e estratégias para chegar lá? Hoje em dia temos que agradecer muito à ciência pelo avanço que tivemos na sociedade, principalmente falando de conhecimento. Só que infelizmente, ou felizmente, não temos muitos estudos que observam e comparam indivíduos naturais com indivíduos não naturais na musculação. Na verdade, eu acho que isso nunca vai acontecer, e caso aconteça, não teria uma boa aplicabilidade, até porque provavelmente seria feita uma dosagem em uma substância específica. E hoje sabemos que esses atletas e até mesmo usuários recreativos que nem competem não usam apenas uma droga, muito menos uma dosagem específica. Então a resposta seria praticamente impossível de mensurar. Dito isso, nos resta evidência empírica, que é comparar na prática como esses diferentes grupos de atletas treinam. Eu fiz uma seleção com os melhores atletas naturais e como eles treinam. Ponto importante, eu utilizei apenas atletas naturais da WNBF, que é a federação que testa todos os atletas que competem.
3 days a week for me is kind of the sweet spot now. It's usually, I mean, over my career, it's been 3 to 4. That's always kind of been the sweet spots. You know, a lot of preps I've ran 4-day training splits, but this one I'm definitely just going to stick to 3. And I caveat it with like, okay, it's 3 days per week and no more than 2 days in a row. Because I know from past history, more than 2 days in a row and recovery is just not all that great and performance starts to take a little bit of a hit. And this is the context of training with plenty of intent, plenty of effort. I'm sure I can spread the training out more so across the week and have less intensity there. But again, I just don't have the time, to be devoting like 5 days, 6 days a week in the gym because I want to make sure that, I have family time in there.
Right.
And I know from past history too, like I can look at past history where I've like actually thrived the most in the gym as far as a performance standpoint, meaning my ability to lift load, my ability to increase reps, that type of thing, is when I've trained in that 3 to 4 days per week. When it starts to creep over that, I just don't recover too well. What's interesting too is that I grew up in the 80s and 90s bodybuilding. I've been through the 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. A lot of things are cyclical in this field. So, and I could be wrong, but I'm going to throw this out there. I think in the next year, the low volume, high intensity approach is going to make more noise. And that's depending on who's preaching it, right? Like usually it's like whoever's chirping the loudest out there and the most, it's going to draw more traction. So, if we're having a lot of people throwing out high volume, well, that's where a lot of people are going to start gravitating towards. So I kind of just see like, the Ben Howards of the world, right? Like they've been training 3 days a week for years and years and years. And, they're backing it up with the results. So yeah, that's kind of just how my philosophy has been, is that, you just got to be able to recover. And that's going to look different person to person. So that's kind of where I'm at though. Long-winded answer there, but I would throw some context there.
You mentioned the bro splits. I want to latch onto that for a second. Was that your first bodybuilding routine you ever, and again, you didn't consider it bodybuilding, but would you say your first routine you kind of fell upon was the bro split?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'd learned that you just, as a bodybuilder, you train less than what I expected. Because when you first get into the sport, you think these guys must train 8 hours a day, all this sort of thing. But no, I learned that you train a body part once a week and you split your whole body up into those various sessions throughout the week. And that's what I did. And I would argue I've manipulated it slightly. I've changed it for the better. It's more efficient now, but largely speaking, it's all the same. It's all the same movements. It's the same sort of volume. It's the same split in terms of what days I do certain body parts. And there's this old saying, isn't it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it worked for me. I was getting success, so I felt no reason to change. And 15 years later, I'm still improving. So I would argue that it works well for me.
Awesome. So why don't you break that down for us? Would you say now you've refined it to be productive for you? And what does that look like now?
So I will start the week. I'll just itemize it for the viewers because people like to know specifics. So on Monday, I'll train back. On Tuesday, I will do shoulders and triceps. Wednesday is a rest day. Thursday is legs, quads and hams together. Friday, I do chest and biceps. And then I do another shoulder workout on Saturday, only because shoulders were a lagging body part for me earlier in the career. So I chucked in an extra shoulder workout on Saturday. And I've just kept that one in. It's been the same split I've had certainly since I've been competing, which has been 14 years.
If your intensity is high, your volume's most likely going to be a little lower. If your intensity is lower, your volume can potentially be a little bit higher. I think something that maybe I've been called out upon a few times is that I am preaching that only low volume works. I'm not necessarily preaching that. I'm just preaching that if you want to learn to train at a higher intensity, you've probably got to follow that suit with a lower volume approach, because otherwise you're really not going to be training at high intensity. So you can't train at super high intensity and super high volume. You'll not be able to recover and progress at that kind of setup. From the intensity and the volume side of things, you can then sort of start to underpin what is going to be what will make up your recovery capacity. And then what will make up your recovery capacity will then directly influence, how much work you can do, what is actually progressible for you as an athlete, because that's going to vary from athlete to athlete, but it's also going to vary over time. It's a moving landmark. This is not a thing that is fixed in stone. One set of hack squats right now might be absolutely great for you and you might be producing results progressively overloading, but in some future realm you might be able to do 2 sets because you're getting more sleep or you're eating more food or whatever the approach that you're taking is to improve recovery capacity. Namely, what I think one of these things that I think I see a lot of athletes that come under my wing is the first thing I would do is have volume set at a pretty standardized sort of relatively low baseline, maybe lower than what they've been doing. And we'll go for a round of each session with execution clips and we'll find and pinpoint areas in which that athlete can improve. If execution clips come across to me, and often there are things we can improve, I will hold volume at that setup until we get to a point where everything looks picture perfect. Strength is rising. And when I say picture perfect, I don't mean form is looking like something out of an exercise library. I mean that form is adequate, it's safe, but there is effort and intent in the movement in every single exercise.
How do you like to approach your training? You got that high effort, like Ben Howard. He likes that high intensity, not training as frequently. We'll say majority of the times out of the year from when I spoke to him. I don't know if things have changed now. And then you have like this super high volume, 6 days a week kind of training. Where are you relative to that spectrum? Where do you kind of lie and how do you like to do things?
I'd say I'm closer to the low volume end. I tend to lean more that way. And I used to be really high volume. Since I've started bodybuilding, I literally went in 2 years ago with zero understanding. I was, just sort of floating around doing bits and bobs, and looking back on it, I kind of think the sessions that I was doing in the gym and, the lack of plan or the lack of progression over time and just those sorts of things, I made a lot of mistakes with my training. But speaking to people over the last couple of years and say, how did you build that? Or, what do you do that helps you kind of build X, Y, or Z, or how do you make this much progress, has helped. Because what I have done and what I did after, I guess it was after Worlds, so this last off season, was I made a note of cutting junk volume, cutting those sets that you're just not really doing anything with. It's just filling up time in the gym and it gives you a nice pump and it makes you feel good, but they don't really build the muscle. And I think that's what I've learned a lot, is it's all about the intensity. In terms of my training, I've built it back up to 5 days a week, but I did drop down to 4 days a week after, in the off season, because I noticed that as my sessions were getting progressively heavier and harder, it was taking more of a toll on my body. Before the competition, I was training 5 times a week, and that was pretty standard. I generally do that. But as I find that I'm struggling to recover, even though I've got the food going in, even though I'm focusing on, sleep and all the other things that you need to do, if my training is just too intense to keep up with the 5 times a week, I can scale it back a little bit and just focus on the areas that I'm trying to improve. In terms of what I am doing, I'm only squatting once a week now. I'm only doing one sort of quad focused leg day, and then I do the hamstrings again with another hip hinge in with my back day at the end of that, because
Gotcha.
I still feel that I need to bring those up
Right.
as an area.
Deixa eu te perguntar rapidinho. Você já sabe como treinar como um natural? Sim. Saber que você pode ter mais resultados na academia treinando de 2 a 4 vezes na semana? Para aprender tudo isso, basta tocar no botão ali link abaixo. Agora vamos observar os atletas que utilizam esteroides.
Man, he must spend like 12 hours a day.
No way. I work out about right now, maybe 2.5 hours a day.
It's not the length of the workout, it's the intensity, isn't
It's
it?
the intensity and the quality of the workout. Yeah, I start out on Mondays working legs. On Tuesday, I go in and I work chest and triceps. On Wednesday, I work back and biceps. Thursday again, I'll be starting all over again.
Do you take any time off?
Sundays, work out Monday through Saturday, and I take off on Sunday.
The best way to make good gains, supersets or focusing on one body part at a time? Definitely focusing on one body part at a time. I'm a huge believer in like the good old bro split type workouts where you just destroy one body part, train at full intensity on that day. Every other style of workout works as well. I just like that style, and I think you should be putting all your focus and energy into like each set that you're doing, not worrying about, oh, I just did a set of chest, I'm going to superset with back. Like, to me, that's insane. You haven't rested enough to give all out for both sets.
E aí, pessoal, vagando um pouco mais pelos vídeos, né, desses atletas que usam esteroides, vocês vão perceber que não necessariamente eles falam qual é a divisão de treino, mas eles deixam explícito, né? Afinal, é sempre dia de peito, dia de costas. Então, como o Ramondino, vocês estão vendo ali, ele está fazendo 4, 5 exercícios em sequência para o peitoral. Assim como o Rafael Brandão, por exemplo, que se você pesquisar sobre os treinos dele, vai aparecer ali treino de braço, treino de costas, treino de peito. Então, eles separam a semana para cada grupo muscular em um dia e buscam, como o Chris Bumstead mencionou aí, destruir o grupo muscular na mesma sessão de treino. Vale a pena ressaltar também, pessoal, que na minha busca, né, por encontrar algumas entrevistas, nesse mesmo canal, você encontra, sim, naturais, atletas, que inclusive são muito bons, que treinam nesse mesmo estilo de um grupo muscular por dia, o famoso bro split. Mas eu tenho que falar que, buscando por atletas que são usuários de esteroides, eu não encontrei muitos que fazem a mesma abordagem que atletas naturais em sua maioria, para não dizer nenhum. Certo, aqui vemos uma clara diferença na maioria, com exceções para ambos os lados. A maioria dos naturais opta por ir treinar menos dias na semana, e entre a quantidade conhecida como volume de treino e a qualidade do treino, que seria a intensidade, eles optam por priorizar a intensidade, trabalhando com um volume mais reduzido do que vemos em usuários. E falando neles, a tendência pelo que vimos é que atletas de fisiculturismo com doping optam por um maior volume de treino e indo mais dias na semana na academia. Isso não é novidade para ninguém. Na verdade, eu trouxe tudo isso para vocês para poder transmitir a minha opinião com um embasamento um pouco melhor. Como vocês sabem, eu vivo o fisiculturismo natural e sei na prática que existe uma grande diferença na abordagem dos naturais. Mas, obviamente, existem exceções e pontos cinzas. Existem naturais que terão resultados excelentes com um volume de treino alto, indo várias vezes na semana treinar, apenas focando em treinar pesado. E existem atletas usuários que terão excelentes resultados indo menos dias na semana, com um volume de treino mais baixo e focando em progressão de carga, por exemplo. E depois existe a média, que mostra que a maioria consegue resultados seguindo uma abordagem que também funciona para uma maioria. Ao meu ver, a principal coisa que explica essas diferenças é que normalmente naturais, para obterem bons resultados, precisam se tornar cada vez mais fortes e focar na sobrecarga progressiva, e para isso, o planejamento exige características como as que vimos nas entrevistas. Já os usuários podem, mas não precisam ter essa abordagem. Aliás, nesse caso, fica mais difícil avaliar os porquês, já que, como eu disse, a variável da química toma um papel muito importante nesse processo. Mas e você? Comenta aí. Qual é o tipo de treino que você faz atualmente, se você já testou outros tipos e qual deu o melhor resultado para você. Também compartilha esse vídeo com seu amigo que é natural, deixa aquele like para ajudar, se inscreve no canal, tamo junto e até o próximo.